This is Beer in Front, part of the Odd Pods Media Network. Sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. I'll talk about some old school beers that maybe you've forgotten about, some new beers that have the potential to be a classic. I'll also talk to various people around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 165 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris, and Beer in Front is a proud member of the Odd Pods Media Network. I have a good show this week. I'm talking to Chris Pisney. He's at the Cicerone Program, and we're going to discuss the program itself, what it takes to become different levels of Cicerone, how that's going to make each person a better beer drinker, as well as you're going to learn a lot about beer, serving beer, the different styles in beer. That was a lot of fun, so that's going to come up in a little bit. I'd like to thank the people that support the show over on Patreon. If you're interested, you could head over to patreon.com/beerinfront. You don't have to subscribe. You can just, if you're listening to the show, I'm assuming you subscribe, but if you don't, hit that subscribe button, give the show 5 stars, follow me over on YouTube and TikTok and all that, and like those videos. That helps the algorithm make the show more popular. So please, whatever you could do, I do appreciate it. Last week, Rod J. from Rod J's Beer Ventures was in town. I met him over at Hop Butcher for a couple beers. A couple other people were there as well. So you heard Rod J. before on the show a few times. It was nice to meet the man in person. A lot of fun hanging out with him. We're going to have to get back together again soon for some more podcast appearances. But it was a lot of fun meeting Rod J. in person over at Hop Butcher. Couple things I want to talk about off the beer subject. One, if you live near me in the North Center, Lincoln Square area of Chicago, you might have noticed it's loud when there's a concert at Wrigley Field. A couple weeks ago, the Dead & Company were there, and I was outside grilling, and Truckin' came on, and it was so loud, I thought like a neighbor was playing music outside. It was loud, crystal clear. Well, it wasn't a neighbor. It was the Dead & Company from Wrigley Field. And I'm thinking, maybe it's like the wind or something, because in all the years I've lived here, I've only heard one show. That was Guns N' Roses a couple years ago, and that was loud. But this not only was loud, it was crystal clear. So I'm thinking, all right, it's an aberration. The other night, Fall Out Boy was here. They were super loud. I even made a comment on Twitter about it because I'm about 2.5 to 3 miles away from Wrigley Field. So it's not like I live down the street. I'm far away. And I put a thing on Twitter. I asked a bunch of other people. The Chicago Sun-Times actually ran with one of my tweets about it, that how loud it was. Now, country music singer Morgan Wallen was in town a couple nights afterwards, and I'm out walking Moira, and it's, once again, crystal clear. So I don't know what's going on with Wrigley, or if you live near me, I know I have some listeners that are from the neighborhood. That's loud. I'm glad I didn't buy Springsteen tickets. One, because they're a left arm, and who has that kind of money? But also, I could just sit outside and listen to the show if it's going to be that crystal clear. All right, that's enough of me rambling on about non-beer stuff. So let's kick off this episode of Beer in Front. In beer and beverage news, the state of Illinois has told restaurants they can continue to offer cocktails to go for another 5 years. This law was enabled during the pandemic to help bars and restaurants stay afloat, and the bill has been, or the law has been extended for another 5 years. I'm a proud union member, a union steward. I read over on Brewbound that the Brewing Union of Georgia has filed an unfair labor practices suit against Creature Comforts for retaliation firing, so keep an eye out on that. But if that's true, that's not cool. Have plans for November 3rd and 4th? The Illinois Craft Brewers Guild announced the dates for FOBAB. So that's going to be November 3rd and 4th. Check out the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild website for more information. I talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago that Sons of Kent, that's a brewery out in Canada, they released a new beer, a Fergie Jenkins Classic Pilsner. Well, Rob from the Internet Talks Beer sent me over a can. I'm going to have that on an upcoming show. I don't know, I'm torn because the can looks so good. I almost want to display it, but I am going to have the beer and I'll save the can. Great Lakes out of Cleveland, they're coming out with a new hard seltzer, Rocket Pop, which is supposed to be like the Bomb Pops. I'm a huge Bomb Pop fan. I had a Bomb Pop inspired seltzer from Four Hands, I think, a couple years ago, thanks to the Seltzer King of Chicago, Steve. I'm looking forward to this one because I love Bomb Pops and I love Great Lakes, so I'm going to have to check this one out. There's been some really cool collaboration beers that have come out in the last 5 years or so. Probably the biggest has been Black is Beautiful that came out from Weathered Souls out in 2020. That supported equality and social justice reform. They're coming out with a new one, a volume 2, and this time the proceeds are going to benefit the National Black Brewers Association. So keep a lookout for new Black is Beautiful. If it's anything like the beers that came out in 2020, you're going to want to grab one from every brewery that collaborates. I thought they were all fantastic. So keep an eye out for the new Black is Beautiful from Weathered Souls. All right, welcome back. The Cicerone Program, for those that aren't aware, is similar to the sommelier program, but this is for beer. There are 4 levels, from certified beer server to master Cicerone. Coming on now to let us know more is Chris Pisney. He's the program director of the Cicerone Certification Program. Chris, good morning. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How did the Cicerone Program come about?
That's a great question. So Cicerone was founded in 2007 by Ray Daniels. Some of your listeners might recognize that name because Ray has written several popular books on the topic of beer. But Ray also spent many years working for the Brewers Association in the United States. And as part of his work at the BA, he would travel the United States, visiting breweries, talking to brewers. And he saw how much work that brewers were putting into making the best beer possible. And then at the end of the day, he would go out to restaurants and bars that were well known for the beer that they served. And he would find that sometimes during these visits, the beer didn't taste like the beer that left the brewery. And sometimes the servers didn't really know as much about the beer that they were trying to sell Ray as they could have. So he thought there has to be a way to incentivize those beer professionals who are making the beer drinking experience, whether the beer drinker likes a light American lager or a pastry stout, making that experience as great as the beer that left the brewery. So he solicited feedback from people in the industry, whether they were wholesalers or retailers or brewery operators, about the types of knowledge that people in the business of selling and serving beer should have. And with that information, gave birth to the concept of Cicerone. So our mission is to empower beer professionals around the world through the development and recognition of beer skill and knowledge. And as you mentioned at the beginning, we primarily do this through professional certification exams. So you mentioned certified beer server, certified Cicerone, advanced Cicerone, and master Cicerone. So that first level, certified beer server, targets those frontline servers who are maybe new to the beer industry and they are interacting with customers. Maybe those customers know a lot about beer or don't know anything about beer. And maybe the server doesn't drink at all. Maybe they're not old enough to drink, but their job is to sell beer. So we test those candidates on the fundamentals of beer service. Things as basic as pouring a beer that looks great, making sure that it's in a beer clean glass that looks great to the consumer. Things like talking about flavor, talking about flavors in beer styles in a way that's easily relatable to any customer that comes before them. And so that exam is a 60-question exam, 30 minutes to complete. It's all online, all multiple choice. More than 150,000 people around the world have passed that exam. Certified Cicerone gets a little bit more complicated. So the idea behind certified Cicerone is that target candidate is somebody who is managing a beverage program, is a beverage manager at a restaurant, a beverage director at a bar, something like that. Or they are responsible for selling a portfolio of different beer brands, either a wholesaler or a brewery sales team. That exam consists of a 3-hour written portion, a 12-sample tasting exam. So people have to participate in person in locations around the world, and a short demonstration. And the reason we start including a tasting component at Certified Cicerone is because beverage professionals need to be able to make quality control decisions in the field based on what's going on in the beer. People can't carry a lab around with them and test for different flavor compounds. So that tasting exam consists of 12 samples. The first 4 samples will say, okay, does this sample have diacetyl, acetaldehyde, acetic acid? You tell me. And then there's a style discrimination panel where we'll say, is this beer a Belgian double or a Doppelbock? You tell me. And then we'll have 4 different beer styles, and we'll ask the candidate whether the sample has signs of mishandling after it has left the brewery. So it's very practical and actionable type of assessing knowledge. At the certified Cicerone level, we get a lot more heavily into things like the brewing process, draft system operation, troubleshooting, beer styles, of course, and we start introducing concepts of beer and food pairing. Advanced Cicerone, there are about 170 people who have passed that exam as opposed to 4,000 who have passed certified Cicerone. That consists of a 6-hour written portion, 2 oral exams, and 4 different tasting panels. And then Master Cicerone, only 22 people around the world have passed that exam. And that is a 2-day exam. Consists of 16 essay questions, a dozen oral exam with industry experts that we fly in from all over the country, and 8 different tasting panels. So it's really the ultimate test of beer expertise. So with one oral examiner, you might be planning a beer dinner with a James Beard award-winning chef. Another exercise, you might be talking to a master brewer about what's going on in a brewery, or designing a draft system or troubleshooting a draft system. So those are the 4 levels of certification in the program.
I would imagine that for anyone that wants to become part of the industry, whether it's working at a brewery tap room to anything else, that having the Cicerone certification on your resume would give that person a leg up over most other candidates.
Yep, I've gone to LinkedIn and typed in Cicerone and jobs, and there are plenty of positions where they say either Cicerone certification preferred, or they'll say you need to become a certified beer server within 30 days of employment. So yeah, it's well integrated into the industry at this point.
Are there like breweries or restaurants, bars that provide this for their people? Like, do they have all of the employees go through just the basic level 1 to get some knowledge, or is that not happening yet?
That's happening. Yeah, it's been
Okay.
happening. Yeah, I mean, Boston. The first one that comes to mind is Boston Beer Company. Is nearly every employee gets certified beer server, and
Okay.
it probably depends on your functional role in the organization. The
Yeah.
legal team might not have to be certified beer servers, but yeah, Boston Beer. Lots of different organizations do it. They're too numerous to count at this point.
Like for myself, I'm just an average beer drinker. I'm not part of the industry. And for the last year now, I keep going back and forth like, should I do this? For somebody that's not part of the beer industry, how do you think that would help them appreciate beer more?
Yeah, I think, well, there's two ways I can answer this question. I think at its core, if you like beer and that's the extent of your relationship with beer, the concept of Cicerone shouldn't be top of mind at all. We believe at its core, beer should be a simple pleasure for the consumer. They should get a beer when they order a beer, they should get a beer that's fresh, looks great in a glass, a clean glass, and it tastes great. And maybe they'll have another one. And that's really good for the beer industry, is when the consumers are having a second beer. But if you're listening to this podcast, you might be a little bit more nerdy about beer than the average consumer. So whether it's pursuing certification or not, we do offer great ways for people to learn more about beer. So we just updated, replatformed our Beer Savvy e-learning program last month, and it is a fantastic way, and that is designed to help people pass the certified beer server exam. But it's a great way to learn about the origins of beer styles and beer flavor and where it comes from, and basic draft system troubleshooting. So if you have a kegerator, and I talk to a lot of beer drinkers who have a kegerator or serve keg beers, and they're always asking me about, why is my beer foamy and things like that. So these types of resources can teach people about how to address those problems that they're having. So I would say, even if you don't want to take the certified beer server exam, check out Beer Savvy, because it's a fun way to learn more about beer. And you'll probably, even the nerdiest person will probably learn a few things that they never knew about beer with that program. But I started from a homebrewing background, and there are probably a few homebrewers who are listening right now. And as I mentioned, we have sensory components to the exam. If you don't even want to be certified, we offer all kinds of flavor training opportunities. We just had an off-flavor course in Chicago at Cicerone HQ last week. We do it around the country. We even do it in Australia and South America and in Europe. And we also offer off-flavor kits that people can use at home. We have a single-user off-flavor kit. We have off-flavor kits where multiple people can get together and learn about off-flavors. And it's great for homebrewers who want to know what's wrong with my beer, or how I can make my beer better, or how can I prevent these flavors from appearing in beer. And, the certification is the validation process. So if you think you know a lot about beer, how do you actually validate that without getting a third party involved to assess your knowledge? So that's really the validation aspect is important for consumers as well, I found.
Yeah, like you mentioned homebrewing. I know my first homebrewing experiment 20 years ago, I wish I knew then now, like what? Oh, this tastes like a Band-Aid. Well, no, there's actually technical terms for that.
Absolutely.
And had I known, what I know a little bit more now of that would have helped outside of, I don't know what's wrong with this, but this just tastes like I came from CVS and opened up a box of Band-Aids.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, people perceive flavors differently. So what might be a Band-Aid to you might be something completely different to somebody else. So, and that's where flavor training is so important because you're isolating a flavor compound and comparing it to the same beer without that compound. And when I was first getting a very similar story, when I was first getting into beer, I read about Orval, the famous Trappist beer,
Yeah.
Orval, and how it used these amazing Styrian Golding hops, and that those hops had a lot of character. So I picked up a bottle of Orval and tasted it. And I thought, wow, these hops are crazy, but I wasn't perceiving the hops. I was perceiving the 4-ethylphenol Band-Aid character that you were just describing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know. I hadn't been able to isolate that compound and understand where it came from. So it's a really eye-opening educational experience to go through that process.
You mentioned on the intro Ray Daniels, and I know as a former homebrewer myself, I think anyone that has ever homebrewed has a copy of Designing Great Beer on their bookshelf. So this is coming from a person that knows, all about homebrewing. So I think that this program would help homebrewers out a lot.
Absolutely. The difference is we do focus heavily on the service aspect that a lot of homebrewers aren't going to have a lot of experience with or need to do professionally. But yeah, there's quite a bit of overlap for sure.
You were also talking about food pairing. So from level 2 up, food is part of the Cicerone program. How do you think that would help, like the average person like myself, in pairing beers with food? I think that would be like just beneficial to general knowledge. Oh, okay, I know I could try such and such with this beer, or the other way around.
Yeah, that's at the certified beer server level. That's the emphasis in talking about beer flavor. That are food flavors essentially. Hops taste like either citrus or herbs or spices, and there are fermentation flavors that taste like fruit or whatever, and there's malt flavors that taste like bread. So understanding how those components work together and understanding commonly accepted flavor interactions like carbonation and what that does with, say, fat, or alcohol with, fat as well, is very helpful in putting together a pairing. I'm one of those people who just likes to try different things. So you're not going to always have a knockout pairing, but understanding from an assessment standpoint, understanding the flavors and being able to talk about those flavors in a way that is thoughtful and meaningful is what we're really looking for. But yeah, beer is food, and, being able to recognize that and saying, okay, this beer has these malty flavors that when I pair it with this fruity, beer, it reminds me of, I don't know, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something like that. So those types of looking for different flavor hooks are what it's all about, really.
Beer really is for everyone and should be. Can you explain the Brewing Respect and Unity Coalition?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a coalition that of the Brewers Association, Cicerone, the MBAA, and the American Society of Brewing Chemists and the Pink Boost Society. And we are collecting data on ways to minimize the incidence of violence and harm in the beer industry. And so we're working together, collecting data on our program participants' knowledge on things like responsible service, or whether they've had access to bystander intervention training. And we share resources from each other's organization with our own program participants so that they get more exposure to those resources. So, for example, as of last year, everyone who takes our certified beer server exam sees messaging that says, if you're a beer professional, you have a responsibility to maintain a safe environment for your patrons, and understanding things like over service and, other ways that your patrons or coworkers can be harmed. And we have resources to help you. So after your exam, check these out. So thousands of people every year now receive that type of messaging and access to resources because of the Brew Coalition.
You were talking about like the Beer Savvy online. I've noticed that the website is terrific, very informative, like the Beer Clean day that you had last April with like the graphics on there. It's funny just going to a bar that's supposed to be a beer bar, or even looking at like people's social media posts and like, that glass isn't clean.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick synopsis of like what a beer clean glass is and how that helps us as a consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. So beer is a product that can really rat out a dirty glass. So you might have a glass of water and it might look clean, but there are films on the surface of the glass that are very apparent when you have a liquid like beer in that glass. So if you see like clumps of bubbles on the side of a glass, those are oils or fats that didn't get removed from the surface of the glass during cleaning. They're invisible to the human eye, but carbonation in the beer collects on the surface of that oil, and you can definitely see that it's not clean. So one of the things that you need to do to make sure you have a beer clean glass is get a specialized soap, a detergent that is not petroleum based like a typical dishwashing detergent, and use that to clean your glass instead of throwing it in a dishwasher with plates that have butter all over them and things like that, because those fats that you're washing your plates and other dishes with, the beer glass, will stick to the surface of your glass.
Well, you've sold me, Chris, so I'm going to take the certified beer server exam probably in the next month or so. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on, talk to people about the Cicerone program. Where can people find out more if they want to look and join the ride with me?
Yep, absolutely. Well, our website is cicerone.org, cicerone.org. That's the first place you can go to. We have a YouTube channel with tons of video content that you can check out for free that we are a great learning resource as well. So those are the two places. And we have an Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff too.
Yeah,
Cicerone.org.
Yeah, and I'll include the link in the show notes. Chris, thank you again, sir. I really appreciate you taking time out this morning. I'll talk to you down the road.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Be sure to check out Infectious Groove Music, whether you listen to the podcast or you check them out on YouTube. That's a show you should always put in the cart. The beer in front that I'm going to have today is from Goldfinger in Downers Grove in collaboration with Jack's Abbey. This is a Dortmunder lager. I'm also recording this on video. If you're a Patreon member, you could head over there and watch the video, but I wanted to do this on video because I wanted to show you the clean glass since I'm smart now. But no, I love everything Goldfinger puts out. Jack's Abbey is a brewery I've heard a lot about, so this one should be good. Let's bust it open. Good carbonation here. good color. Look at the glass. Look, there's no bubbles on this glass. It's a beer clean glass. The aroma is very nice. I get a lot of the noble hops here, along with some of the malt. It really smells great. Yeah, that's good. Really nice finish here. Well balanced. I get the malt that they use. I get a nice, not a lot, but there's a good hop bitterness here that really, it's very balanced. It's an easy drinking beer. It's 5.8% alcohol. So have a couple of them. You're in good shape. I think this is good. Everything that Goldfinger puts out has been great. Their Vienna Lager is one of my favorites. Everything that I've had. I've heard good things about Jack's Abbey, so I'm going to have to check them out a little bit more. But if you see this, definitely from Goldfinger, put their Dortmunder in the cart. All right, after speaking with Chris, I decided I'm going to take the Cicerone test to become a certified beer server. And that was pretty difficult, I must say. Some of it was common sense. Some of it was a lot harder to me, but I studied. I bought some flashcards from them. Chris gave me a good idea and doing some study questions. But I am an official certified beer server from the Cicerone Program. If anyone has questions, please reach out. Go to cicerone.org. You could find out more information, or you could get a hold of me. I thought it was worthwhile. There were some nuances between different beer styles that I wasn't quite familiar with. I like Belgian-style beers, but I'm not an expert on them. I'm not an expert on them now, but I know a lot more than I did a couple of weeks ago. So if this podcasting airline gig doesn't work out, I'm a certified beer server now. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this week's episode of Beer in Front. I thank you very much for listening. If you need to get a hold of me, reach out. Dave at beerinfront.com. I'm also available on all the social media channels at Beer in Front. Big thank you to Chris Pisney over at the Cicerone Program for talking today. Next week's show is going to be good. I'm going to talk with the restaurant and brewery Hello Monty in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That was fun. They have some good beers as well, so definitely be on the lookout for that next week. Hope everyone has a great week, and remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. All right, take care, everyone.